The letter from the Illinois Department of Financial and Professional Regulation arrived on a Thursday morning in November of 2016. I had known it was coming for 4 months, since the day I sat in a conference room with my colleague Patricia Lowry and a hospital administrator, and stopped pretending that what I had been doing for 8 years was something other than what it was. I had cooperated fully with the investigation. I had entered treatment voluntarily. I had told the truth in every interview and deposition. None of that changed the outcome. The letter was very precise and very final. It informed me that my medical license, the document I had first received in 1982 after 10 years of preparation and 30 more years of defending and renewing, was revoked, effective immediately, with no pathway to reinstatement. I read it once. I put it on the desk. I made a cup of coffee.
Exhales. I sat back down and I looked at the letter and I thought, this is the correct outcome. This is exactly what this situation warrants. And that thought, the clinical diagnostic, entirely dispassionate recognition that the punishment was proportionate to the action, was both the most honest thing I had thought in years and the saddest. My name is Harold Messing. I am 71 years old. I am a former cardiothoracic surgeon. For 30 years, I operated on human hearts at Northwestern Memorial Hospital in Chicago. I performed over 4,000 surgeries. I trained 63 surgical residents over the course of my career. I published 41 peer-reviewed papers. I was, by any measurable standard, very good at what I did. I was also, for 8 of those 30 years, secretly addicted to prescription opioids that I obtained by writing prescriptions in the names of patients who never received them. I am going to tell you exactly how that happened.
Not because the telling is comfortable. It is not. But because I am a physician, and physicians are trained to present cases completely. And the most important case I ever need to present is my own. I want to say one thing at the very start that I think matters enormously. I knew everything about opioid addiction before I became addicted to opioids. I had treated addicted patients. I had intervened in the drug use of 2 colleagues during my career. I had lectured third-year medical students on the neurobiological mechanisms of opioid dependency, the dopamine pathways, the tolerance cascade, the specific architecture of how a brain rewires itself around a pharmaceutical molecule. I knew all of it, and it did not protect me. Not one single piece of knowledge protected me. I want you to hold that fact while you listen to this story because I think it is the most important thing I can tell you before we begin. Knowledge of a danger is not immunity from it. Expertise is not armor. And the most educated people in any room are sometimes the most thoroughly fooled by their own sophistication. I was born in 1953 in Chicago, Illinois. My father, Alexander Messing, had come from Poland in 1946 with $17, a change of clothes, and an engineering degree from the University of Warsaw that American employers spent 15 years declining to recognize. He worked in a machine tool factory on the South Side for 22 years. He was the most precise man I have ever known. Not emotionally precise, not particularly, but in his work, in his thinking, in the way he approached every problem. He brought a methodical exactness that I understood very young was the thing that had allowed him to survive what he had survived and build what he had built in a country that had not made it easy. My mother, Helena, had come from the same city in Poland, a different story with the same ending. Chicago, cold, working hard, building something with what was available. She worked as a seamstress and then as an alteration specialist at a department store on Michigan Avenue for 30 years. She had hands that could do anything, precise hands. I have my mother's hands. The surgical precision people sometimes commented on in the OR, that came from Helena Messing, who could take in a jacket sleeve to within a millimeter without a measuring tape. In our household, achievement was not celebrated. It was expected. Not cruelly. My parents were not cold people, but they had crossed an ocean and rebuilt their lives from nothing, and the implicit contract in everything they did for me was that I would justify that cost by becoming something. Something that could not be taken away. A profession with a title. A credential that crossed borders and survived catastrophes. My father said to me once when I was about 12, "They can take your house, Harold. They can take your money. They cannot take what is inside your head." I understood. I became a doctor partly for my parents and partly for myself, and partly because being a doctor was, in the world I grew up in, the closest thing available to being untouchable. I have thought about that word since. Untouchable. I was not untouchable. I was very, very touchable. I just did not find out until I was 58. I was an exceptional student, not in the way of natural brilliance, in the way of relentless preparation. I studied longer than anyone else because the alternative was not having studied enough, and not having studied enough was not a category I was willing to occupy. I graduated from the University of Illinois at Chicago in 1975 with a degree in biochemistry and a grade point average that got me into the University of Chicago Pritzker School of Medicine. I completed medical school in 1979, residency in general surgery at Northwestern in 1986, and a fellowship in cardiothoracic surgery in 1988. 13 years of post-secondary training, 13 years of being pushed past the edge of human endurance on a regular basis and learning to function there anyway. 13 years of being told explicitly and implicitly that weakness was not something surgeons displayed. That lesson, the lesson about weakness, is the one that eventually destroyed me. Not because it was wrong, but because I applied it to everything, including the things it had no business being applied to. I joined the cardiac surgery department at Northwestern Memorial Hospital in 1988 as a junior attending surgeon. I was 35 years old. I had been preparing for that position in one sense since I was 12 years old, sitting across from my father hearing the word untouchable. And the work was everything I had expected it to be. Not the hours. Nothing prepares you for the hours, even after 13 years of training. But the work itself, the specific experience of standing at an operating table with a human heart under your hands and having the knowledge and the skill to make that heart continue when it would otherwise have stopped. There is nothing in civilian life that I can compare it to. I am aware that sounds like ego. It is not ego. It is simply the most accurate description I can give of what it felt like to do the work well. I married Susan Kaplan in 1990. She was a hospital administrator at Rush University Medical Center. We had met at a conference 3 years earlier and maintained a long-distance relationship through the final years of my training in the particular way that two very driven people maintain relationships when their careers do not allow them to be in the same city. We were married at a small ceremony in Lincoln Park on a Saturday afternoon in September. 20 people, a dinner at a restaurant afterward. Neither of us had wanted anything larger. We were both, fundamentally, people who got things done efficiently and did not see the point of elaborate performance for its own sake. We were well matched in that way. We were also, in retrospect, two people who had built such thorough professional armor that neither of us was particularly practiced at the kind of vulnerability that a marriage eventually requires. That gap, the gap between our professional competence and our emotional availability to each other, was invisible in the early years and became more visible as the pressure increased and the space between us that should have contracted instead expanded. Our son Benjamin was born in 1993. He is now 28 years old and works as a software engineer in Seattle. We speak every 3 or 4 weeks. The calls are warm and careful, the calls of a son who has made peace with his father without fully resolving what the years of distance cost him. I accept that. I do not press for more than is offered. Benjamin deserves to set the terms of this relationship because I was not available to him in the terms he needed when it mattered most. That is one of the primary facts of this story, and I want it stated clearly before I explain how it happened. The 30 years at Northwestern were, professionally, as successful as I could have hoped. I became a full professor in 1998. I was named Chief of Cardiothoracic Surgery in 2001. My research on minimally invasive valve repair techniques was adopted as a standard protocol at multiple institutions. I am proud of all of it. I am not going to pretend otherwise in order to appear appropriately humbled. The work was excellent, and it helped people, and that is true regardless of what I did to myself alongside it. What the career also was, over 30 years, was a sustained exercise in operating at the extreme edge of human performance, under conditions of unrelenting pressure, with no systemic support for the psychological cost of that pressure, and a culture that actively pathologized any acknowledgement of it. I was not weak. I was operating in a system that was not designed for humans. Both of those things are true simultaneously, and I have taken a long time to hold them both without using either one to excuse the other. On the 14th of March, 2008, I lost a patient on the table. I'm going to describe this in clinical terms first, and then in human terms because both descriptions are necessary, and neither one alone is complete. The clinical description. A 54-year-old male patient referred for aortic valve replacement presented with complicating factors that had been noted in preoperative assessment but assessed as manageable. During the procedure, an intraoperative complication, a dissection of the ascending aorta, occurred at a point in the surgery where the repair options were severely limited. Despite full surgical team response, the patient could not be stabilized. He was declared dead at 14:37. A subsequent review by the department's Morbidity and Mortality Committee found that the surgical management of the complication had been appropriate and within the standard of care. No finding of negligence, no disciplinary action. The committee found that the outcome, while tragic, was within the known risk profile of the procedure as consented by the patient and family. Now the human description. His name was David Carrasco. He was 54 years old. He had a wife and 3 teenage children. He had been a high school football coach for 22 years. I knew this because his wife had told me in the preoperative consultation. She had sat in my office and told me about him the way families do before surgery, as if the details will make the surgeon more careful, as if the surgeon might work harder for a person than for a case. I do not operate differently based on who a patient is. Every person on my table received every skill I had, but I do remember the details. I remember every detail of every patient I have lost. And David Carrasco I remember more clearly than most, because he was the one whose death broke something open in me that did not close again for a very long time. The M&M committee cleared me. The hospital cleared me. My colleagues, the ones who understood the complication, who had seen similar cases, told me accurately that I had done everything correctly, that the outcome was not the product of an error, that these things happen in cardiac surgery with a frequency that everyone in the field knows, and that the public does not fully understand. I accepted all of that intellectually. Intellectually, I understood completely that I was not culpable. In every other dimension, in the place where the image of David Carrasco's wife waited for me in the family consultation room, and I had to walk through that door and say the words, in that dimension, the clearance meant nothing at all. The sleeplessness began within 2 weeks of the surgery. Not the ordinary sleep disruption that surgeons manage routinely. Complete insomnia. I would lie in bed beside Susan with my eyes open and replay the procedure from the moment of the dissection. I would modify variables. I would run alternative scenarios. I am a surgeon. Problem solving is the fundamental activity of my mind, and I was applying it to a problem that had no solution because the outcome was past changing. My mind could not find the exit from that loop because there was no exit. The loop was closed. And after 4 weeks of not sleeping, when the tremor appeared in my right hand during grand rounds, small, barely perceptible, but perceptible to me, I sat in my office at 11:30 at night, and I opened my prescription pad and I wrote a solution. I want to walk you through the reasoning as precisely as I can, because I think the reasoning is the most important part of this story for anyone who has professional expertise in any area. The reasoning was not irrational. That is what makes it so dangerous. I assessed myself as a physician would assess a patient presenting with acute anxiety disorder secondary to a traumatic occupational event, complicated by significant sleep deprivation. The indicated pharmaceutical intervention for that presentation was a low-dose benzodiazepine for the anxiety and a short-term opioid analgesic for a concurrent lower back problem that had been managed conservatively for several months, and that the sleep deprivation and stress were genuinely exacerbating. The prescription I wrote was clinically defensible for that presentation. The problem was that I was not functioning as a physician treating a patient. I was a patient treating myself, using physician-level authority to remove every obstacle that the system would ordinarily have placed between that prescription and the person who needed it. What I bypassed by writing my own prescription was not just a bureaucratic requirement. I bypassed the external perspective, the second opinion. The colleague who might have noticed that the clinical picture I was presenting looked very much like a person in acute psychological distress who should be referred to a psychiatrist rather than handed a prescription pad. I bypassed all of that because I believed, genuinely, arrogantly believed, that I was the most qualified person available to assess my own situation. I was a cardiothoracic surgeon who understood pharmacology at a graduate level. What could a general practitioner tell me about my own neurochemistry that I did not already know? That thought, stated plainly, sounds absurd. In the moment, inside my own head, it was entirely convincing. The medication worked. That is the part of the story nobody wants to hear, but which is absolutely essential to understanding how addiction happens. I slept the first night I took it. Not a full night, 4 hours. But 4 hours after 4 weeks of near total insomnia was an event of almost physical relief so profound that it registered in my nervous system as restoration, as repair. The tremor in my hand was gone the next morning. The loop in my mind, the replaying of the surgery, the closed circuit of a problem with no solution, was quieter. Not gone, but quieter. I went to the OR that week and I operated well. I functioned. And functioning, after 4 weeks of barely functioning, felt like evidence that what I had done was correct. The medication had solved a clinical problem. That was what it felt like. That is what my brain told me, and my brain was very good at being convincing because my brain had spent 30 years being the most reliable instrument in any room it occupied. I had planned for it to be short-term, 3 weeks, 4 weeks, long enough to stabilize, then taper and stop. I knew the tapering protocols. I had prescribed them to patients. What I had not fully accounted for was the way the medication addressed not just the acute problem, but the chronic background noise that I had been carrying, unexamined, for years. The ambient anxiety of 30 years of high-stakes surgery, the accumulated weight of 4,000 operations, the ones that went perfectly and the ones that didn't. The marriage that was functional and correct and had never quite reached the warmth I had expected it to have, and had stopped expecting it to have sometime in my 40s. The son who was 11 years old and had a father who was present in the house and absent in the way that mattered. All of that background noise, which I had managed for years through work and will and the discipline of a man who had been trained not to acknowledge weakness, went quiet when I took the medication. And the quiet, after so many years of noise, was the most seductive thing I had ever felt. I did not taper after 4 weeks. I renewed the prescription. Part 5, 8 years hidden, 70 minutes to 83 minutes. I am going to describe the operational mechanics of what I did because I think the specifics matter to anyone who works in healthcare or knows someone who does. Over 8 years, I wrote prescriptions under the names of 9 different patients, all of them real patients of mine, all of them individuals whose charts I had legitimate access to, none of them aware their names were being used. The prescriptions were written at irregular intervals and filled at different pharmacies across the Chicago metropolitan area. I paid cash for all of them. I varied the dosages and the specific opioid formulations to avoid creating a pattern that would trigger pharmacy monitoring systems. I managed the inventory carefully. I never went to the OR impaired. I had a rule for myself, the rule that every addicted physician has, about the line I would not cross. I did not cross it. What I did not understand until Patricia Lowry put a folder on a conference table in front of me in 2016 was that the line I was so carefully not crossing had been moving, incrementally, for 8 years in the direction that all such lines move when the person drawing them is also the person who benefits from redrawing them. Susan did not know. I want to be precise about this because it matters. She did not know about the prescriptions. She did not know about the scale of what I was taking. What she did know, and said to me once in 2013, was that I was different. Not dramatically, not in a way she could name specifically, just different in the particular way that intimate partners register changes in the people they live with that the person themselves cannot detect because they are standing too close to the change. She said, "Harold, I feel like I'm talking to someone who is slightly further away than you used to be." I told her I was under significant work pressure. She accepted that because it was also true. The work pressure was real. The medication was more real. But work pressure was a category she understood and could accommodate. And I knew that, and I used it. Benjamin was between 15 and 23 during the years I was using. He was a perceptive child who became a perceptive young man. He did not know what was wrong. But he knew something was wrong in the way that children of addicted parents always know something is wrong. Not through dramatic incidents, but through the texture of daily life, the quality of presence in the parent they live with. He went to college in Seattle in 2011 and did not come back to Chicago except for holidays. I told myself this was normal, which it partially was. What I did not tell myself, what I have had to acknowledge since, was that he had been relieved to go. He told me this 2 years ago, carefully, without cruelty. He said, "Dad, being home felt like being with someone who was half gone, and I did not know where the other half was." I heard that and I wrote it down on the legal pad on my desk where I write things I need to keep. Half gone. That is the most accurate description of 8 years of functional addiction that I have encountered. Present, capable, performing, half gone. Patricia Lowry and I had worked together at Northwestern for 20 years. She was an anesthesiologist, a woman of formidable clinical intelligence, and the specific quality of attention that the best anesthesiologists develop. The ability to monitor multiple variables simultaneously and notice when one is outside its expected range without making noise about it until she was certain. She was in the OR with me regularly. She had been watching me, I learned later, for almost 2 years before she said anything. She did not see impairment in the OR. I want to be clear about that because it matters clinically and legally. My surgical performance did not deteriorate measurably. Patient outcomes in my cases showed no decline. What Patricia saw was subtler than impairment. She saw the management, the way I handled timing, the pharmaceutical knowledge I applied in certain conversations that was a degree too specific and too personal. A comment I made once about the half-life of a particular formulation that struck her as the comment of a man who had been paying close attention to that specific data point for personal rather than academic reasons. She began quietly to ask questions of pharmacy staff at the facilities where I operated. She was a friend. She did what a friend does when they are reasonably certain of what they are going to find and are hoping to be wrong. She was not wrong. The pharmacies that had been filling the prescriptions under the patient names I had used produced records that were unambiguous. Patricia came to me before she went to the administration. She sat across from me in my office with the folder on her knees. She had not put it on the desk yet, as if by not opening it she was still giving me the chance to tell her she had made a mistake. She said, "Harold, I need to ask you something directly, and I need you to answer me directly." And then she asked me, and I said yes. Not yes, you are correct about the prescriptions. I said yes in the complete sense. Yes to everything. Because Patricia Lowry had been my colleague for 20 years and was sitting across from me with 8 years of my secret in a folder on her knees, and she had come to me first, and I owed her the truth at minimum. The truth was the smallest thing I could give her in exchange for what she had done. I entered a physician health program voluntarily the following week. I self-reported to the medical board simultaneously. Both actions were the result of advice from an attorney who told me clearly that cooperation would not save my license, but might preserve my freedom, my pension, and my ability to remain in a healthcare-adjacent role if I chose to pursue one. He was correct on all 3 counts. I completed the treatment program in 2017. I received the license revocation letter in November of 2016, while still in treatment. I have been sober since October 14, 2016, the day I said yes to Patricia Lowry in my office. I know the date the way people who have been to the bottom always know the exact date of the bottom. It does not fade. You do not misremember it. It is simply always there, specific and permanent, like a scar. Susan filed for divorce in the spring of 2017. I did not contest it. Not because I did not love her. I did. In the way that 2 people who have built a life together over 27 years love each other, which is a real and genuine way, even if it is different from the way they loved each other at the beginning. But Susan had married a surgeon. The surgical career had been the structure around which our entire shared life was organized. The schedule, the income, the social identity, the answer to the question people ask at dinner parties. Without the career, I was a man she did not fully recognize, in an apartment she did not want to live in, with a past that required explanations she was exhausted by. She deserved better than exhaustion. I told her that. She thanked me for saying it. We divided everything equitably and without theater, and she moved to a condominium in Lincoln Park that I have never been invited to. I understand. The loss of the career is the thing people ask about most when I describe this period. They expect it to be the hardest part. It was not. The career had been my identity for 30 years, and losing it was significant in ways I am still processing. But the identity had also been, in part, the problem. The career had been the structure that made the weakness invisible even to me. Without the career, I had to find out who Harold Messing was without the title and the white coat and the operating room authority. That process was difficult. It was also, in ways I did not expect, the first genuinely honest investigation of my own character I had ever conducted. I did not particularly like all of what I found, but I found it. And finding it, after 70 years of not looking, was worth more than I can quantify. I work now as a medical consultant for a healthcare legal firm. I review case files and provide expert analysis. I use my knowledge without my license. It is, objectively, a significant reduction in the scope and impact of what I did for 30 years. I have made my peace with that. I attend NA meetings twice a week. I have a sponsor who is 23 years sober and who treats my medical education as entirely irrelevant to the business of staying sober, which it is. I have been sober for 8 years. I intend to be sober for whatever is left. Benjamin calls every few weeks. Last spring, he came to Chicago for 4 days. We went to a Cubs game, his idea. We sat in the bleachers and ate bad hot dogs and talked for 6 innings about nothing in particular, and it was the best afternoon I have had in years. Not because anything was resolved or said, just because we were both fully there, both present, both all the way in the room, the way I had not been for too many years of his childhood. He is not the same as he would have been with a fully present father. I know that. He probably knows it better than I do. But he came to Chicago, and we sat in the bleachers, and that is something. I am determined that it will not be nothing. I want to offer you what I can, which is a clinically honest assessment of what happened to me and why. I will do it the way I would have presented a case at grand rounds, findings, analysis, and conclusions. I owe you at least that much in exchange for your time. Finding 1. Expertise creates a specific and dangerous vulnerability to the very thing it describes. I have thought about this more than any other aspect of this story. The mechanism is this. When you spend decades becoming expert in a domain, you develop an implicit confidence that your knowledge of that domain constitutes a kind of protection from it. Physicians who understand addiction believe, without fully articulating the belief, that their understanding insulates them. It does not. In fact, the expertise creates an additional hazard: the ability to construct a clinical-sounding justification for every step of the process. I did not think I was becoming addicted. I thought I was managing a clinical situation. My expertise gave me the vocabulary for that rationalization and made it convincing in a way that a layperson's rationalization would not have been. The more you know about a danger, the more sophisticated your self-deception about it can become. That is not a paradox. It is a mechanism, and it is worth understanding clearly. Finding 2. Perfectionism is not a professional asset. It is a psychological liability dressed in the clothing of one. I was trained in a culture that treated the acknowledgement of struggle as a form of professional weakness. Surgeons did not see psychiatrists. They did not discuss the psychological toll of intraoperative death. They performed competence at all times because the performance of competence was, in their world, the same as competence. When my competence was genuinely threatened by the psychological aftermath of David Carrasco's death, I had no mechanism available except to perform competence more insistently. The prescription was that performance. If the culture I worked in had made it possible to say, "I am struggling after this case and I need support," I would not have needed to find the support from a prescription pad. I am not blaming the culture for my choices. I made my choices. But the culture created a container in which those particular choices were the most available options. That container needs to change. In medicine and in every high-performance profession, admitting struggle is not weakness. It is the only path to actually addressing the thing that is struggling. Finding 3. The people closest to you always know before you do. Susan knew something was different in 2013. Benjamin knew the house felt different before he left for college. Patricia Lowry saw it in the OR 2 years before she said anything. I knew none of it because I was not available to know it. I was too fully occupied with the management of my own concealment. If you are in a relationship with someone who tells you that you seem further away than usual, that is not a complaint to be managed or deflected. It is a clinical finding presented by the most reliable diagnostic instrument available. A person who loves you enough to tell you what they are actually observing. I deflected that finding for 3 years. Do not deflect that finding. And the conclusion. I have been asked many times, usually by younger physicians, what I would have done differently. The answer is simple and difficult in equal measure. After David Carrasco died, I should have walked to the office of the hospital psychiatrist, a man I had met at faculty meetings and respected, and I should have sat down and said, "I lost a patient on the table last month and I am not functioning the way I need to be functioning and I need help." That is it. 7 sentences. What I would have received in return was a colleague's professional support, a referral, a monitored and appropriate treatment plan, and the continuation of my career in a form that served my patients and my family, rather than the secret I was building to protect it. I did not say those 7 sentences because saying them felt, in that moment, incompatible with being the chief of cardiothoracic surgery. Those 7 sentences cost me the career, the marriage, and 8 years I will not get back with my son. The help you do not ask for always costs more than the help you do. Always. I am the proof of that. And I am presenting the case to you so that you do not have to become proof of it yourself. My name is Harold Messing. I am 71 years old. I am a former cardiothoracic surgeon with 8 years of sobriety. I spent 30 years learning how to save other people's lives. It took me 8 years after that to begin saving my own. If you are a medical professional watching this, or anyone in a high-performance profession who has been taught that asking for help is weakness, I want to tell you plainly, the help is available. The physician support line is staffed by volunteer physicians and is available at no cost to any doctor in the United States. SAMHSA's national helpline is 1-800-662-4357. Free and confidential, available every hour of every day. The call is not a confession, it is a diagnostic step. Take the diagnostic step. If this story gave you something to think about, share it with someone who needs to hear it. Subscribe to Senior Untold Stories for a new story every week. Leave a comment. Tell me what you took from this. I read every one. Take care of yourselves, including the part of yourselves that needs help, especially that part. Good night.